Welcome to Crypto Disrupted. I'm your host, Trent Lipinski, and I am here with Joe and Chris. Chris, can you tell us what you're working on?
Yeah, I'm Chris with Lannister Holdings. I'm the CTO. We're currently building our development shop for blockchain development, as well as building our shop for intellectual property and patenting of the pieces that we create. The development shop is really interesting. We got a bunch of really good people coming on board, and we're building some amazing tools that are disrupting a lot of different spaces right now.
Awesome. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm Joe Snyder. I'm the CEO of Lannister Holdings, and we are, like Chris said, we are building an internal platform for real estate finance on blockchain, and specifically the origination and servicing and then securitization of loans on blockchain, the packaging of notes on blockchain, secure decentralized ledger. Our company has recently gone public. We did a reverse merger in the US on the OTC market. And so we took Lannister Holdings and merged it with a company in Nevada called No Borders. So we're currently traded on the US OTC market under the ticker symbol NBDR, Nancy Bravo Delta Robert. And so we are currently working with our Lannister development subsidiary to build and deploy blockchain technology, smart contracts, smart contract audits, which is something that's been a very high demand conversation in the last week with the whole ERC-20 bug and all of that stuff going on. So we have a client facing side in Lannister development. Our dev teams obviously are working on our internal platform and developing that, but we are also working with clients in energy, logistics, oil and gas falls under energy as well, but oil and gas, healthcare, to build out and prove and discuss the use cases that they see for their verticals on how blockchain can disrupt and impact lower cost, lower risk for them. And then on the internal side, we have Lannister Capital. And Lannister Capital is another subsidiary of Lannister Holdings. And the idea behind Lannister Capital is we are looking to operate in the real world, lending money to real estate investors, specifically experienced real estate investors, for multi-unit income producing properties, and do those notes and those transactions on blockchain. So that's our internal use case. Our internal platform and focus is inside fintech, specifically real estate fintech, and the use cases there, and also the intellectual property there. And then our client-facing side, which Chris mostly runs with our client-facing teams and our chief technical lead and our sales teams and everything, is really focused on just broad spectrum, middle market, large-scale companies on how blockchain disrupts logistics and, like I said, energy and finance and all of these other systems. So it's very, very interesting. It's a really cool time to be in the business.
Yeah, you guys are working on a lot. Usually we get a guest on and it's like they're working on one area, and it sounds like you're kind of you've got kind of a shotgun approach, because you've got internal, you've kind of got your own internal projects, you're doing everything that you're doing in the real estate side, but then you also have essentially what's almost like a blockchain development agency,
it directly is a blockchain development industry. And that was kind of the idea, right? Is we can focus on a single thing internally, right? We can sit and say, we're going to build these decentralized real estate notes for investors, right? And that's a very niche down market, a very specific thing that we're going to tackle and we're working towards. But at the same time, if we're building the company around, or the development pieces around making that happen, why don't we do development for outside clients as well? Yes, we have to grow the company. Yes, we need a bigger base of developers. We need more people. We need more management. We need more infrastructure. But if we're already running the internal pieces, we can run those external pieces as well. And we can leverage those external pieces to increase our knowledge base, our understanding of how these pieces work and what these pieces do. And it gives us a lot of strength, and it also gives us a lot of community outreach, right? Because we get to talk to all these different people about all their different ideas. And we get to come at each idea and say, here's what you think this is, and here's what this really is, right?
Yeah.
So you get to come at all these different people with all these different ideas in all these different industries, and really see what's available out there and what's able to be disrupted. And the truth is, almost everything. I mean, of course not, but such a wide swath of current technology is able to be disrupted at least somewhat or to a large extent. And that's really awesome.
What on the client side, what are you seeing right now in terms of what's the driving factor? Is it smart contracts? Is it supply chain management? Where are you seeing, some of the initial interest right now?
Yes.
Yeah. The interest really comes in anywhere that, okay, well, it's multifaceted, right? First, you have the people who contact you or contact us more aptly about ICO token launches raising money, because a lot of people see, oh, these people raised $25 million. I want to do that. Cool. I mean, I want to do that too. Why not? but that's not necessarily the real goal, or not really what this technology is going to become, right? That's the first stage and the first really dipping the toes into the water. But what we're seeing is just industries across the board. We're talking to, like Joe said, oil and gas, supply chain, real estate finance, anything that has a ledger of transactions essentially can be disrupted with this technology. And that leads to just a massive amount of different things. I mean, your card has a ledger of data of everything you do in it every single day, right? That is eventually going to be distributed in some manner. I mean, look at Tesla. They're not using blockchain. They're not doing blockchain stuff. But at the same time, all of their cars are talking to their central network to get more data, to understand what's going on, to build their maps, to make the automation and automatic driving possible. All these types of systems, I'm not saying we're working with Tesla. I'm sure that's not out there.
If you saw their stock today,
yeah, if you saw their stock today, you might want to, no financial advice here, make your own decisions on when to buy things. But it's a massive spread of things. I mean, because we're talking about, again, we talk about tokens, ERC20 development, Ethereum development, cryptocurrency development, hard forks of Bitcoin, or hard forks of Ethereum, hard forks of the 75 other cryptocurrency blockchains that are out there. But you have a more enterprise level stuff. Like if you go down the hyper ledger rabbit hole, there's a lot there that doesn't necessarily give you, public blockchain, ICO, launch a cryptocurrency, let's mine stuff kind of thing. And there's all these different, proof algorithms. You have proof of time, you have proof of stake, proof of work, all this different stuff that's coming along. And all these different technologies come about, and it really leads to a massive package of underlying pieces that are going to change the way that we do the things we're currently doing. Like if you look at, say, the interplanetary file system, IPFS, you can launch websites essentially to a distributed network. Now, it's not very large at the moment. It's not very fast at the moment, but it's really interesting. It's kind of cool to be able to do that. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff to make it happen, of course, because it's an emergent technology. But as that becomes the norm, right, we're going to see a massive shift in the way you develop for websites, the way you develop for the internet, the way you develop to get your message across. And that's such a simple thing that we take for granted, right? You think, all right, I want to build a website. What do? Well, I go buy a WordPress template and I stick it on a server at GoDaddy or, I don't know, some random $5 a month hosting, and bam, I have my website. But that's going to change. And the way we do that is going to change. And building the tools to make that accessible to normal people is a very powerful thing to be doing.
Yeah. And then, to top it off, it sounds like you guys are also working on the capital side of things, and then you're publicly traded. So that's unusual in this space, because most of these blockchain companies so far, they've done ICOs. They're not necessarily generating revenue yet. They're not on the client side. And then even few of them are actually publicly traded. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what that process was like and how you got there?
We're still there. We're still there.
In it, we should say.
Yeah. So there's That's a great question. You know, the reality is that we are still there, and the reason that we did that was there's a couple of specific things that went on. First of all, we looked closely at doing an ICO, you know, and there was a couple of routes for us to be able to go to execute that that transition from a private consultative development company over to a shout it from the rooftops, go loud, go broad. And one of the options that we looked at was a token generation event, which is probably a more apt word than ICO anymore. The SEC really doesn't like anybody saying anything about an offering and then not having it registered with them. Just as a warning to everybody out there, think about that. But that process took us through a couple of different things. And what we realized in that process was that we wanted to be heavily regulated up front. You know, we wanted to be in a position where we had a reason to talk to the broader market. We had a reason to be able to showcase who we are and what we are doing in a broad reach kind of a way. And also in a way that we are at the outset heavily regulated and in bed, I don't want to say in bed, but in step with the regulators, the SEC, FINRA, OTC market, which is the market that we trade on, which is one step below NASDAQ, and putting ourselves in a position to come into this from the standpoint of saying, we believe regulation and financial compliance and KYC and all of the things that happen when you accept money from the public, we believe that those are coming down the pipe. You can't just, you can for a while. You can run willy-nilly when you got Bitcoin at $1,000 and there's 700 people doing it or whatever. And as soon as you get to scale and you're taking money from Ma and Pa Jones in Iowa, the regulators aren't going to play with that. And so we decided to go to a reverse merger because it allowed us to become publicly traded in an abridged sort of a fashion. It's a much shorter time frame, and the shortness of the time frame was important to us because this is a blue ocean technology structure right now. There is a massive amount of interest. There's a massive amount of scope load, and there are not very many players out there that are really truly competing, especially US-based players who are really competing in this space. And so we went to reverse merger. We looked at a lot of companies. It was a lot of work. We were able to successfully go from deciding to go public to being a publicly traded company in 51 days. Wow. So, it's a very aggressive time schedule and things like that. We've been publicly traded for just over a month now, and we're still finishing up a lot of work. We're still finishing up a lot of financials, and there's all kinds of just amazing work that goes into that. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And there's an amazing adventure there that I personally really dig, right? I'm not the tech guy. Chris and our tech teams are world-class, and I love them. But, I'm a business guy, and I'm an M&A guy. I like to buy stuff. I like to merge stuff. I like to break stuff and see what happens. And so going public gave us the opportunity to do a few things. Number one, it gives us the opportunity to have that scaled conversation with the market. It makes us special, right? When we're reaching out to folks like you, we get to say, hey, do you want to interview the CEO of a publicly traded company, in the blockchain space? And that's kind of unique, right? There's not a lot of that out there. So we do get that attraction. That's helped us get a lot of media attention. It's helped us get a lot of these type of interviews with amazing folks like you and, connect with your listeners. But additionally to that, it puts the onus on us to be regulated first. And so we believe very, very deeply that tokens are, in most use cases, securities. And we believe that, especially in the verticals that we are looking at for our internal use cases as finance transaction, and then ultimately mortgage-backed securities on tokens instead of bonds or paper processes or the typical securities or contracts that exist are the way that this moves forward for the token market. And so that allows us to look at this from a capital standpoint and say, okay, we can build out a loan structure and offer it in the real world from ourselves or from our partners. We're working with, multiple different players across multiple industries to see what the best ways moving forward are. But the ideology is this, is as a public company, I can go acquire an existing capital company in Arizona. We're based in Arizona because of regulation and regulatory friendly and all these kind of things. And I'd love to go into that. But we can acquire a capital company in Arizona. And now as a publicly traded company, that acquisition is something that we can facilitate, and we don't need to pay all cash, and we can do all kinds of fun deal structures and things together. So it opens those opportunities. But by controlling the company who's doing the lending, we get to dictate how the blockchain gets used, how the tools get deployed, how they get tested. And we know right now, even though blockchain signature is legal in the state of Arizona, because Governor Ducey signed a bill just, I think, a month or 6 weeks ago, legalizing signatures on blockchain in Arizona, you still can't facilitate a foreclosure on blockchain right now.
Yeah.
Right? You can't do a foreclosure on a smart contract right this moment. So we're going to have double the workload for a while. Yeah. And that sounds onerous. It is. It sounds like a pain in the butt. It is. But the fact of the matter is that the company that comes through and does double the workload, does the regular note and deed of trust, does the regular, paper and pen and recording at the county system, and does all that, but also does that loan on blockchain with customers who are interested in that and want to see that happen and everything else, that we get to build, deploy, and prove our technologies, and then patent them and own the rights to how those tools work with real-world use and real-world application. And that's a massive differential, we believe, for the use case and the technology proof on the things that we want to build. And then for the client-facing side, it gives us the power to have these meetings with prospective clients and with partners and say, we're not just sitting around selling these services. I'm not just having a great sales team up front and then we're, running around on a recruiting team on the back end. I know some companies that do that they're just trying to find guys to fill these contracts that they manage to onboard. We're actually building tools for ourselves, for our company, for our intellectual property rights in the real world, in real time. And so we're able to take those experiences and that knowledge and that self-power and deploy it on behalf of our clients and our customers as well. And we really believe that it's multifaceted. Additionally, it gives us revenue. We turned down good amounts of money at the outset of this before we went to the merger by, number one, not going to an ICO because we could have, and by number two, not going to venture capital because I didn't want to take blocks of capital, which we had to then deploy and attempt to deploy in ways that were really accretive and scalable, and also that we were essentially going to be lighting capital on fire to prove a theory in the hope that we would achieve some end goal. And as a guy who has bootstrapped multiple companies, I've bought companies, I've merged companies, I've sold companies, Chris has done all of those crazy things with me. We believe in a model where you fund it through revenue. Mm-hmm. And then when you do need to access capital for scaling events, when you do need to access capital for acquisitions, when you do need to access capital because there's key vital value scaling things that exist, then the capital markets are very, very friendly. Yeah. But the cost of capital to go get 5 or 10 or 25 or $50 million from venture capital up front on the hope that you're going to build something, that's very expensive money. And
you're also diversifying ownership if you do that. So
you're just absolutely smashing your equity, Yeah.
So with the model that you're looking at, the startup I ran, same model. I bootstrapped it. I leveraged the markets when needed, and I leveraged capital when needed, to make an acquisition to be able to grow the company, and it was very successful, But at the end of the day, the end result was I was driving my own revenue. So I wasn't beholden to anyone else.
That's right.
So I didn't have to have investor meetings. I didn't have to, tell my investors things that maybe weren't true. Um, you know,
or just honestly, I mean, a difference of opinion. I mean, if I take $20 million from a VC and we want to go this direction and they see it this way, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, I got to take this guy's phone call and say, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full. And I don't do that very well.
Yeah.
There's also a difference in the true cost of capital between those two ideas, because you're just saying, you know, using acquired capital, using outside capital to fund an acquisition to grow a company. You know up front what the cost of that capital is, right? You go to the person and say, this is the acquisition I want to make. This is the terms of the acquisition. This is the company I'm going to acquire. This is what its revenues are. This is what its IP is. This is what its asset, blah, 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 blah. You know what you're getting. And the person giving you the capital says, okay, these are my terms for that. When you go to venture capital up front with an idea saying, my hypothesis is that we can build this thing and grow it into the most amazing unicorn ever. And they say, okay, well, I'm going to give you this much money for this much percentage of your company. That's undefined terms, right? The only defined term is I'm giving you 60% of my potential idea. But if your potential idea is later worth $1 billion, it's the most expensive money you ever took.
Yeah.
By far. You know, and so we, you know, Lannister Development, our website. So just as a frame of reference, our website for Lannister Development is not even up yet.
Okay.
And we are having inbound lead gen across every platform we have. We have people hitting us up on Twitter. We have people hitting us up on LinkedIn. We have people hitting us up on email, saying, you know, hey, I'm an investor. I'm a big investor in this ICO, and I want to make sure their ERC20 token that I got sold is secure. Can you guys audit? You know, can I introduce you to them, and then can we make sure that they use you guys to audit their contract?
Yeah,
sure. You know, or hey, you know what? We did a pre-sale, and we need to go forward now, and we need a smart contract and a sale website and all these, you know, an API integrations and an MVF of our platform. Can you guys do that? Absolutely. All the way to, hey, you know, I've got a logistics company or I've got a manufacturing company. I was on the phone with a guy at like midnight last night in Arizona, and he's in Hong Kong, and he's got a facility in Hong Kong and a facility in Thailand. And he wants to build an internal blockchain that allows him to track all of his inventory and all of his products and everything throughout his own system. And then how he looks at scaling that out and licensing it or selling it out to other partners and things like that. And so our website for this service isn't even yet, and we're literally having 2 to 3 client calls between me or Chris or our sales guys. We're having 2 or 3 client calls every single day about the use cases that are available here. So, you know, the revenue that we see coming from the Lannister development side, the revenue and the intellectual property through there will be a phenomenal boon to our endeavors internally to light a bunch of money on fire building a platform, because when you build a platform, you light a bunch of money on fire building a platform. That's kind of how it works.
Well, and I think one of the things that, you know, we talked about this just briefly, you know, before we started recording this, is, you know, we're at a point right now with the blockchain market where this is in its infancy. You know, we don't know what's going to happen a year from now. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, as we're recording this, I'm very happy about, you know, where Ethereum's at today, but by tomorrow I might not be, because it could crash. So, you know, we've seen the volatility in the market already. We've seen, you know, obviously there's billions of dollars in the market, so it's not going anywhere. But, you know, the day-to-day is unstable. So we don't know who the winners and losers are yet. You know, and if you look at like the early internet and you look at, you know, what happened in the 90s and, you know, at the end of the 90s and the dot-coms and that whole mess, I mean, Google was one of the last search engines to launch, and they won the game. So, you know, look at what happened to Yahoo. They ended up getting acquired now by Verizon. You know, yeah, exactly. You know, you have this, you know, so we're in, you know, I've heard people call this the dial-up era. I've heard this compared to the MySpace of, you know, of social networking. You know, there was another guest I had on who, you know, compared this to, you know, voice over IP. This is now money over IP. So, you know, we're at this point right now where everything is so new and all these technologies are in their early stage that we don't know what's going to happen. So, the projects you're working on today and the client projects that you're doing today could be radically different from 2 years from now. Maybe there's another smart contract platform that just comes along and blows Ethereum out of the water. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it could. Maybe there is something more efficient.
And our job is to be prepared to deploy on that when and if it does. The other thing, though, is, just like the name of your show is Crypto Disrupted. And, the fact of the matter is that crypto is getting disrupted. And there's a couple of reasons. Number one is you cannot have an undefined KYC rule across billions and billions of dollars in capital, right? The regulatory bodies that govern this world will not let that happen long term. You can all run to Malta, that's fine. But at the end of the day, they're going to follow you. They're going to knock on your door and be like, hey, come here, I want to talk to you. That's number one. But crypto is being disrupted because the fact of the matter is that crypto is the sexy face of this technology, right? It is a single piece of use case for what these technologies do and how they do it. And, we have a very interesting belief about how tokens get utilized in the future inside of these environments, inside of these infrastructures, and not necessarily as currencies. There's a whole use case between having a verification system based on tokens, right? DevSecOps has been running token verification through systems forever, right? I mean, if I log on to a system and then I get a text back with a security code on my phone, right? This is essentially a token system saying, okay, I'm going to go out and get a third-party verification. Did it come back? Yes, no, green, red, right? Yeah. And so the cryptocurrency side of it, I don't think that's going away. And I think there's some very solid immediate use cases. A company in Delaware, and I don't have their name, but 2 weeks ago, I believe, just changed their stock for tokens legally on the stock market with Delaware, saying, I'm going to give people tokens now. And as an OTC company, as a publicly traded company, that's how we saw it. What I saw when we were looking at this and literally drilling into, we went all the way down the white paper rabbit hole and everything, because there was no reason for me not to. That's just a business plan. Yeah. Basically what we saw was ICO and small cap, micro cap public companies are essentially the same exact situation. And the difference is that ICO, you have fresh, new ideas, new technologies, new ways of doing it. And ICO, you have a white paper and you've got a team page, right? And the team page gets judged on, are these people famous? But really what the team page is being judged on is, do these people have the chops to analyze this? Do these people have the chops to get this platform to market? Is this real, right? And what I saw was, you've got the stock markets where you have these traditional systems and processes and everything else, and it opens at 8 and it closes at 5 and it's closed on the weekends, and it's this pen and paper thing, and you've got all these disparate pieces that, you have a transfer agent, you have a market maker, and you have all these, terrible manual pieces that go into this. And basically an ICO is the same thing, except now it's on a decentralized ledger. Everybody gets a token, all of these kinds of things. And so we really view them as use cases for all of these disruption points in the future. And crypto is going to be disrupted that way. I don't know that the proof of work side of crypto, I don't even make any judgments on that. I was in a mining facility in Phoenix 2 days ago with, and they're just, I don't even know what the cost of all that equipment is. It's impressive. It is impressive to stand in that room, I will tell you. That is a very cool thing to see. They've got a 5-inch dedicated fuel oil pipeline going directly into the building for their massive backup generators. Like, they're not playing around. And so the proof of work systems, but everything outside of proof of work becomes this use case question. And that the disruption there is going to be huge, and the utilization there is going to be absolutely phenomenal.
Well, and the business upside of the services that you can offer on top of that are also, I mean, it's insane. I mean, the interesting thing with, everything blockchain is, the core concept here is either decentralization or distribution. But, what everyone's building right now is essentially kind of centralized or hybrid systems, because we don't really have the infrastructure right now to really do truly distributed networks. So, we'll see actually, on the hardware side, you're going to see more and more data centers specifically offer nodes as a service. And that will become a thing in the future where, you'll run a data center specifically just to run other people's blockchain nodes. You won't even know what data is being transacted on it. You're just going to run the node software and potentially get paid in a cryptocurrency for running that node if someone's running a proof of stake or another consensus algorithm. So, we're going to see those kinds of business use cases on the infrastructure and hardware side. But then on the services side, again, we're talking supply chain management. We're talking about, all these other different use cases. We're talking about financial services. And then you can automate them. That's the real brilliance here is, you can take all these existing financial systems that are cumbersome, that have all these regulations and all the, a lot of manual paperwork. And then you can actually take all those processes, make them a digital transaction and automate that process. But you're still going to need a person or a trusted authority to kind of help you facilitate some of those processes, especially if you're buying a home, if you're in real estate.
That's really true. But so we don't, and it's funny because I just did a podcast this morning, a real estate podcast this morning that was specifically for real estate agents. And that was his question. I was like, do you believe that this replaces a real estate agent? I said, no, just like you don't believe, in 2000, in the car business, everybody was saying, oh, the car salesman, the internet's going to kill the car salesman. You're just going to buy your car online. No, it's not true. When I went and bought my Ford truck, I wanted to sit in, I want to smell the leather. I want to know what all these buttons do, I want to, and so there's a tactile experience with some of these large life purchases that is not going to change on the front end sales side. But with that being said, what we're looking at is not just cost, but risk, right? When you get a mortgage, okay, and the normal mortgage in the United States is a 30-year loan. It has a lifetime of roughly 5 to 6 years, right? So you sign a 30-year loan, you live there for 4 years, you rent it for a year, then you sell it, or you live there for 5 years or 6 years, and then you refinance it, whatever. So the life of that actual loan is on average about 5 to 6 years. Within that 5 or 6 year period, that loan is either sold or packaged an average of 4 or 5 times, okay? So what we're looking at is not just how do we initiate that loan, how do we do that funding, how do we put it on blockchain, how do we make sure that it's a decentralized and secure system, but also on the back end of that transaction, what is the risk base for a bank of buying a security or a note that has been transacted through 5 different parties since it was originally incepted? And a great example of that is B of A bought Countrywide home loans after the crash, right? And if we're honest about it, the feds kind of came in and said, hey, you're buying Countrywide, have a nice day. And then came back 3 years later and said, here's billions of dollars in fines for all of this stuff that you didn't know existed inside of Countrywide's back end. Yeah. Because they had foreclosures on houses that never should have been foreclosed. They had houses that people still lived in that should have been foreclosed. They had, liens and fees and all these different sort of processes and failure points because these notes got sold over and over and over before they ended up at the final owner pool in some packaged mortgage-backed A-rated but really C+ mortgage-backed security that just blew up in AIGID. So what is it worth to those financial companies to be able to know when they accept a loan or when they transfer a financial asset that it is current, that it is compliant, that it is done correctly, right? And you cut that humanization piece out of it. Number one, there's a cost savings there, right? If you can go into the back end of a financial structure and save Fannie Mae 4 points on the back end cost basis of their infrastructure, it's phenomenal. But on top of the true net cost savings is the risk mitigation factor. And these scaled financial companies are worried about risk way more than they're worried about cost at that point. And being able to lower costs, reduce employee headcount, reduce employee error possibilities, and exponentially mitigate scaled risk is a powerful combination.
No, absolutely. And that is the potential of what the blockchain can do for these financial institutions. So, it's it's funny because when I watch mainstream media and, I watch some of these guys at these financial institutions and they're calling, Bitcoin a fraud and whatever. It's like, it's baffling because they're literally, this is the technology that's actually going to save them so much money, and it's going to be the future for all of their automated systems. So,
well, you have to remember one thing there. The people that are talking are not the people who are going to be saving money or be part of the future system. They're the people that are losing their job from us making these technologies. So they have a reason to fight it, right? Like, there's 75 people that are involved in every transaction, or however many, I'm just making up a number, but there's some significant amount of people who are involved in these transactions of these. Let's just talk about real estate notes for a moment. There's millions of other types of assets out there, but every time you transact one, right, every time Bank of America buys a note from Wells Fargo, there's a whole slew of people who are involved in checking every piece there and then filling out Bank of America's internal database from the Wells Fargo database information, and all of the pieces that have to transfer and combine and everything that can go wrong inside of there. None of those people want it to be a smart contract, because none of those people want to lose their job, which is just data entry. And I understand that. I understand their point, but that's not where the world's going.
Look, the Pony Express Union was not happy that, that the USPS happened. And the USPS was not very happy that we all switched to email. And, Donald Trump can beat up on Amazon all that he wants, but the fact of the matter is without the volume that Amazon provides the United States postal system, the postal system doesn't need to be as big as it is today. Mm-hmm. Disruption is never painless, but progress wins. The cream rises to the top. The person with the best platform, with the lowest cost and the lowest risk and the fastest turnaround time is going to win the game. And, when Elon Musk deploys an all electric semi truck that has an autonomous driver, you just reduced 85% of the cost basis of getting goods from place to place, fuel and humans. Mm-hmm. Now that's going to put 2 million people out of work, and that's a net negative for the economy in the short term. But it's a win all the way around for the environment, the world, the economy. People got to go learn different jobs. They got to go find a different way to add value into the new economy. Heck, at a certain point when AI and driverless vehicles and remote work and smart contracts are running the whole world, maybe we can all just be artists and, have a bohemian,
called a post-scarcity utopia.
Or a post-scarcity utopia would be beautiful. In the interim, we want to have an incredible adventure. We want to have a lot of fun. We want to work at the cutting edge of technology, build incredible things with amazing people, and have scaled wealth be a beautiful byproduct of that.
And so I'd like to get an answer from both of you on this question. What do you see as the future of the blockchain and where all this technology is going? Are there any winners or losers that you've seen so far, or who you think's going to win or lose, or what's the future look like?
I kind of think this comes back to your original point, right? Look at the internet in the 90s. There's a lot of boom and bust going on, and I think that same thing is going to be there. I don't want to say, I don't want to sit here and make predictions about what's going to happen in the future and then get caught with my pants down 5 years later when somebody brings up this podcast to me like, hey, look how wrong you were. But we're going to see some very, very significant changes in the way a lot of the baseline technologies around us work, and the changes that are going to happen are to the scale that it's not entirely foreseeable. We can't see all these things that are coming because we don't have all the information yet. But being in the position of building a development company to build these technologies is going to put Joe and I, for at least, in the position of being able to see some things incrementally coming towards us, right? Like the disruption of these logistics companies, just talking to these people who are doing logistics and cutting out 60-70% of the total costs of shipping something, outside of, if you exclude fuel, maintenance on the trucks, and the person driving the truck, where are most of your fees going? Most of your fees are going to the middlemen holding the accounts, and the middlemen, receiving and sending the actual packages or shipments or whatever else, right? The boat costs so much money, but the people at the port actually cost more money. So changing the way those systems work is going to change the way we do commerce on an international level in a way that I'm not entirely sure is comprehensible just yet.
I hear you.
And I'll follow that up with what I think is a really good example, because money's easy to understand when you're talking about, I can save you $1. So I'm going to charge you 20 cents to save you $1. Hey, that works. Let's do that all day long. But the savings that we're looking at are, first of all, they're compounded and they're at scale, but they're savings in time. They're savings in attention. They're savings in preloaded 5-10 year down the road capital investments. You know, Walmart built a blockchain to track some of their product. And I don't know, I'm not inside Walmart. Walmart is not affiliated with us. We're publicly traded, so there's a lot of these like
keep saying we're not affiliated with these people, but
not affiliated with these people. But and they ran a side-by-side comparison, which I love. And what they did was they tracked these few pieces or whatever it was on this supply chain. And in doing that, from product initiation, et cetera, all the way through to the store on their traditional systems, traditional technologies. And this is a company that has spent billions of dollars on technological infrastructure to do these things pre-blockchain. It takes them about 3 weeks to completely end-to-end track the supply, manufacturing, delivery, and receipt, and then sale of a product on their traditional systems. Once they integrated blockchain through that system and went live, it took them something like 3 seconds.
Wow.
What is that differential worth? Right? What is the power to know worth? And that's where I kind of take it back to the cell phone. You know, for the first time in human history, every single person almost has got the entire compilation of knowledge of all of human history in their hand in real time all the time. Now, most of us are using it to leave a terrible comment on Facebook while we go to the bathroom. But the few people who are saying this is great, you know, the library at Alexandria was a mecca, was a wonder of the world, because it was a compilation of the world's data at the time, right? The Library of Congress in DC, if you have never been there, go. It is awe-inspiring. If you ever feel like the American political system is in turmoil and everything else, just go there and absorb that, because knowledge is power, and compiled, usable, searchable, trackable, deployable knowledge is infinite power. And that is the differential that we're looking at here, is the ability to take the unknown and make it instantly known. You know, it took Columbus forever to get from Spain to the Caribbean and then decimate some populations and get a holiday for no reason. But it takes us now milliseconds to get on the phone from anywhere in the world that we are and have a communication and convey information and convey knowledge and receive knowledge, and boom, 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 you're there. And those are the kinds of differentials that we're talking about. You know, we still put stuff in boxes on boats and send it across oceans for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time, you know? And so the question is if you can cut out the cost and the risk basis in the middle of those systems, what do those impacts, what do those ripples come out to, right? What is that freed up time, that freed up capital, that freed up attention, where does that then get deployed? What problems does that then solve? And how does that affect the overall growth of the world? And that's a really, I don't have the answer. I wish I did. But
there's something else to that, because another layer to it is, you know, it's distributed so that everybody's getting access to the information as well. So there's a level of transparency that just doesn't exist in these centralized systems today. So, you know, your example of the port that we were just talking about, like, every single one of those systems is a different system owned by someone else, and that data isn't being shared. So the amount of data that actually gets transacted from one system to another is minimal. There's errors, there's data entry problems, there's all kinds of problems that occur. So being able to have a single system that everybody within the entire supply chain is operating, so they're operating off one single blockchain, and they all have access to it, so that there's no confusion. so that every single person who touches a package or, a shipping container or whatever it is, whatever the asset, whatever the item is, there's a record of where it's been, what's happened to it, and, why it's in the state that it's in now. There's ultimately, we're at a place right now where there's just so many unknowns, but the potential and the possibilities are endless.
It's really endless. It really is. And we're very, very keenly aware of how endless it is. And that, on top of really wanting and having a core belief about revenue first, that's a big deal for me. Like, I don't just light other people's money on fire and hope that it works. I just can't do that in my soul. It sounds like fun, but I can't do that. But aside from that, we believe that if we were to rabbit hole down real estate finance as an exclusive vertical, that we're probably missing some really important things in the space over the next couple of years. And we want to have that, and like you said, it's open. We want to and are having that open conversation. We're having open conversations with universities, other blockchain companies, all kinds of companies, the legislator, the government, and saying, how does this disrupt? How do these work? Where do they work? Where do they not work? And we've heard crazy use cases and you just go, yeah, that's not how that works. All the way over to great ones where you go, holy cow, that would be really cool to watch that get disrupted. And, the transparency of it is a really important part, because being able to open it up in a transparent fashion, it also removes some of the desire and reasons for hacking. If you're going to hack Cambridge Analytica because they have a database from Facebook that you want to get your hands on, the reason that you're hacking that is because it's a closed loop system. And so the hacker's impetus for action is to go steal that data because nobody else has it. But A, if it's secure, you can't hack it. And B, if it's decentralized and it's open, why would you hack it anyway? You can just go look at the blockchain.
Yeah. Well, there is one small caveat here, in that decentralized and open does not necessarily mean public.
That's true.
Right. So talking again about the ports and the supply side, this can be a private blockchain. This can be a decentralized, distributed, but still private and cryptographically secure blockchain. And that all the players involved in distributing those goods would have to be involved in the same system, which gets you a little bit back to the point we're at now, but not entirely, right? So if everybody has a different system and everybody's running a different piece, and the guy who's accepting the package isn't necessarily on the same system as the guy who sent the package, which is kind of what happens now, getting all those players to agree upon agree upon a singular system and then run inside that system is a massive, differential between the way it currently works. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the data is public. The data doesn't have to be public.
Yeah, there's still permissioning with with any blockchain system. I mean, obviously Bitcoin and, some of these cryptocurrencies that exist today are public systems. But most of, like Hyperledger and some of these other blockchain systems, permissioning is you have to have the correct permissions to be able to access certain parts of the data. And to be able to have those user privileges and be able to determine those, it allows you to create systems that, you can still have compartmentalization, but again, there is somewhere where all of the data is stored, where someone with the right administrative privileges has access to all of the data. And that's what's missing from these current systems.
Right. And also, again, bringing up, they're decentralized systems. So even though you have to give permission and you require access to the system, anybody who has access to the system has a consensus on what the current correct data is. So even though it's not entirely public data, it's still decentralized and run with consensus algorithms among a group of nodes. So you still get the benefits of having the decentralization among multiple players without necessarily having public data. And I bring this up because this is a conversation we've had with multiple clients at this point. People call us and they say, we want to build this system. We want to run a system that is more efficient, that does X, Y, Z, that is decentralized, blah, blah, blah. But how do we actually own that? And how do we make sure that that's coming through that system isn't just publicly available, because it's not necessarily data that should be publicly available, right? If a company is dependent on their supply chain and dependent on the way that their goods are delivered, having that be public data is detrimental to that company.
Yeah.
So the idea that it is completely decentralized and completely open and completely public is not entirely true. It can be true. You can, you know, Bitcoin is completely public, as you just said, as those sort of systems need to be. But for people coming in and looking at, you know, monetizable systems that they can build for their internal systems to solve problems that their companies are currently running into, these systems can be private or semi-private, depending on how they want to build them.
Well, and also, you know, like for us, you know, we have a core belief that this is a intellectual property land grab around blockchain right now, right? And so we're not opening our platform wide so everybody can see everything that we're building and how it works and how the use cases are, because we're looking to file patents and protect intellectual property and protect these systems and these ideas on how these things work and how these use cases interact. And a lot of our clients are in that same boat. You know, they want to build specific tools for specific industries. They want it to be in a decentralized ledger. They want it to be secure. They want to use blockchain, but they also want to protect the way that they build it and make sure that they can, you know, keep that in-house or license it externally moving forward and things like that. And there's a lot of value there. And as a publicly traded company, intellectual property is a core value piece of what we're telling our investors is how we move forward as a scaled company with scaled monetization and long-term value. And that has to be done in a sort of a closed way, right? We can't give away, you know, I mean, I didn't get to build PayPal and get 3.5 billion before going out to build my company. So it's nice that Tesla opened up and said, hey, all our patents are open source. Go ahead and use them. I love that. It's beautiful. But, you know, intellectual property is a value source for us and for a lot of our clients as well. And, you know, on that note, you know, I want to talk to your listeners and your fan base and say, you know, we are here to help you. If you are a token investor, if you're an ICO investor and you're worried about the ERC20 bug, our teams do offer security audits. We can talk to the company that, you know, that issued your token and see if they're interested in a third-party audit. We do offer smart contract development, full scope platform development, everything in between for any use case, for, you know, any ICO, for any contract that's existent. You know, we are here to take those phone calls and work with those folks. We have some very interesting structures that we're working on to figure out ways to monetize these things for us and for our clients in ways that allow them to take action, maybe with a little bit less cash. We've worked out some deals maybe on some intellectual property type of splits where we can develop platforms with them and we get to keep a slice of the IP. You know, there's all kinds of, you know, things that we can do to work with and engage and build these tools with people in the best possible scenario for all the parties involved. And so, you know, if you have an ICO that you're going to, if you have a smart contract you need developed, if you have a whole blockchain use case for your company or your industry that you want to explore and you just want to consult on it, or if you want to get another bid on building it, we are definitely here to take those meetings and work with you on.
And where can people find you?
So we are on Twitter at Lannister NBDR, Lannister NBDR. I'm on Twitter as at Lannister CEO. We have Lannister.com. We've got a contact form there where people can go to LannisterHoldings.com, and it's HOLDINGS, LannisterHoldings.com. And we are publicly traded on the OTC market under the ticker symbol NBDR, which the way we remember it is no big deal, right? Like we just went public, no big deal, right? And we are working to finish that merger process. So currently the name of that public company is No Borders. Our company is Lannister Holdings. Those are being merged. We are working to change that name and update that ticker symbol here in the future. But that's how folks can reach out to us. You can email us, contact@LannisterHoldings.com, and reach us that way. But we're not very hard to find, that's for sure.
You can also go to Lannister Development.com. It's not finished yet, but it will be very shortly. You can find us on LinkedIn, of course.
Probably by the time this airs. Yeah, LinkedIn.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
We get
thank
a lot
you
of
guys for
messages.
coming on the show.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, take care, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day.